From the very first moment their eyes met on a quiet studio set, something shifted. An energy so subtle yet so powerful it seemed to bend the entire atmosphere around them. Xiao Zhan stood with a calm expression, his usual gentle smile resting on his face, while Wang Yibo approached with an unreadable yet intriguing look. No cameras were rolling yet, no directors shouting instructions, no fans screaming their names. Just two individuals standing at the edge of a destiny neither of them fully understood. That moment felt like the start of something that hovered between fate and accident. A connection that did not announce itself loudly, but whispered, humming like a low, steady note in the background of something far greater than either of them expected. It was the moment when the love began. The production studio was buzzing with activity that day. Assistants ran around securing props, stylists fixed last-minute details on costumes, and the director paced like a man with a vision too big for words. But amid all the noise, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo created their own pocket of silence. Even if only for a few seconds, they seemed to recognize something in each other. A reflection, a familiarity, a spark. Their hands brushed for the first time when they were given their scripts. A simple moment, a necessary exchange. But for some inexplicable reason, both of them paused. A sudden warmth traveled up their fingertips. Xiao Zhan looked down, surprised at the rush of emotion he felt from such a brief touch. Wang Yibo blinked, his usual expressionless facade breaking into something almost vulnerable. Neither of them spoke about it, not yet, but the moment lodged itself into their minds like a bookmark, marking the first page of an unwritten story. And so, the connection began to grow. During the early days of filming, the pair was cautious, professional, polite, and yet undeniably curious about each other. Yibo had always been known for his cool, reserved exterior, the type of person who rarely revealed his emotions. But something about Xiao Zhan's warmth, his quiet strength, and his unwavering sincerity pulled down the walls he had spent years building. Xiao Zhan wasn't blind to it either. He noticed the way Yibo watched him sometimes, with a gaze that shifted between admiration and fascination. He noticed the subtle smiles, the lingering glances, the small gestures Yibo rarely offered anyone else. It was slow, subtle, and almost unbelievable. It was the kind of connection that grew not through grand gestures, but through hundreds of small moments, each one more meaningful than the last. One evening, long after filming had wrapped up, they found themselves alone on the empty set. Most of the crew had already gone home, leaving behind only the soft hum of lights and the distant sound of wind rattling outside. Xiao Zhan sat on one of the props, reviewing lines for tomorrow's shoot, when Yibo stepped into the quiet space. "You're still here?" Yibo asked, leaning against a pillar. "I could ask you the same thing," Xiao Zhan replied, flashing that warm smile of his, the kind that made Yibo's heart skip in ways he refused to admit even to himself. Yibo hesitated for a moment, his voice softer when he spoke again. "Do you ever feel like this project is different?" Xiao Zhan raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" Yibo looked down at his shoes before meeting his eyes again. "Just different. Like it's not just a drama anymore. Like something else is happening." Xiao Zhan felt that quiet spark again, gentle, sweet, and undeniable. "I think I know what you mean." A soft breeze drifted through the open door, brushing against them as if nature itself was trying to carry their unspoken words into the air. The silence between them grew deeper, not awkward but meaningful. It was the kind of silence that held a question neither dared to ask, an answer neither dared to speak. But their hearts already knew. As the days passed, their bond grew stronger, evolving into something impossible to ignore. The fans noticed it. The crew noticed it. Even the director, who had seen countless on-screen pairs, paused once and whispered to his assistant, "You can't manufacture chemistry like this." Their scenes together became infused with real emotion. When Xiao Zhan looked at Yibo, his eyes softened in a way no acting coach could teach. When Yibo smiled at Xiao Zhan, the corners of his mouth curved with a tenderness he didn't even realize he possessed. But the most magical moments were the ones off camera. Like the time Yibo brought Xiao Zhan a warm drink on a cold morning, pretending it was no big deal, even though he had walked several blocks just to get the exact brand he knew Xiao Zhan liked. Or the day Xiao Zhan noticed Yibo was exhausted from rehearsals and gently adjusted his costume, murmuring softly, "Don't push yourself too hard." Or the moment they sat together during sunset, watching the sky bleed into hues of orange and purple, sharing stories about their pasts, their dreams, their fears, pieces of themselves they rarely shared with anyone else. These weren't scenes written in the script. They were moments written by fate. The turning point came one night during a late rehearsal. The rain outside was heavy, pounding against the metal roof of the studio like 1,000 tiny drums. The atmosphere was intense, fueled by dramatic scene work, exhaustion, and raw emotion. They were rehearsing a confrontation that required deep emotional vulnerability. As they performed, their real feelings began to blend with their characters. At the climax of the scene, Xiao Zhan grabbed Yibo's wrist, pulling him close, their breaths mingling, their eyes locked. For a heartbeat, the world dissolved around them. It wasn't acting anymore. It wasn't pretend. It was real, intense, electric, overwhelming. When the director yelled, "Cut!" neither of them moved. They stayed there, frozen in the gravity of a moment that felt like destiny had finally spoken out loud. Yibo was the first to pull back, his voice barely above a whisper. That felt different. Xiao Zhan nodded slowly. It did. Silence again. Powerful. Charged with something neither of them could deny anymore. The rain outside softened into a gentle drizzle, as if the world itself was exhaling. After that night, everything changed. They started finding excuses to be near each other. Little reasons, tiny moments, a joke here, a smile there. But the truth was simpler. They just wanted to be in each other's presence. Xiao Zhan found comfort in Yibo's quiet loyalty. Yibo found solace in Xiao Zhan's gentle confidence. And even though they never said the words directly, their bond became the kind that didn't need explanation. It was felt, understood, lived. Their connection deepened even more during a late-night motorbike ride. Yibo convinced Xiao Zhan to join. The cool breeze brushed against their faces as the city lights passed by in a blur. Xiao Zhan held onto Yibo from behind, trusting him completely. Yibo could feel Xiao Zhan's heartbeat against his back, a steady rhythm that made him feel oddly complete. "Are you scared?" Yibo shouted over the wind. "No," Xiao Zhan replied, tightening his hold. "Not when I'm with you." Those words lingered in Yibo's mind long after the engine stopped. The soft glow of studio lights filtered through the thin haze of dust as Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo walked onto set the next morning. But something had changed, something subtle yet undeniably present. It lingered in the air like the sweet scent after rain. A tender electricity followed them, invisible but impossible to ignore. It was the aftermath of a moment too real to be dismissed. Xiao Zhan tried to focus on his script, but every time he looked up, Yibo's gaze was already on him. Gentle, questioning, almost as if replaying the events of the night before. Their eyes met, and both quickly looked away, flustered yet warmed by the quiet pull drawing them closer. They weren't ready to talk about it, but their hearts already were. During their first scene that day, they stood barely a breath apart. The director had just asked for a simple exchange, nothing intense, just a conversation between their characters. But the moment the camera rolled, the chemistry snapped into place stronger than ever. Xiao Zhan delivered his line softly, his voice dipping into an emotional tone that hadn't been there in previous takes. Yibo responded, but the words weren't what caught everyone's attention. It was the way he looked at Xiao Zhan. His eyes softened in a way that wasn't rehearsed, a look that felt sacred, intimate, honest. The crew glanced at one another, whispering behind monitors. Are they still acting? Did something happen between them? The director remained silent for a few seconds after calling cut. He wasn't annoyed. He was impressed. Nobody could quite explain the shift, but everyone felt it. After the scene, they retreated to a quiet corner of the set. Xiao Zhan pretended to adjust his costume, but his hands trembled slightly. Yibo noticed, stepping closer without thinking. You okay? Yibo asked, his voice unusually soft. Xiao Zhan nodded, though his heartbeat was loud enough to drown out the noise around them. Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired. But Yibo wasn't convinced. You've been different since last night. Xiao Zhan froze. So have you. A quiet smile tugged at Yibo's lips. Small, shy, and completely out of character for him. Maybe something changed, he said. Xiao Zhan looked up, meeting his eyes fully. Maybe. Before either of them could say more, a staff member called them back to set. They walked there side by side, close enough that their sleeves brushed occasionally. Each brush sent a tiny spark through them. Soft, addictive, impossible to ignore. Later that day, during a short break, Xiao Zhan found himself alone in the hallway, scrolling through notes on his phone. The building was unusually quiet. Most of the team had gone out to grab snacks or rest. He didn't notice when Yibo approached until he felt a presence beside him. Come with me, Yibo said without explanation. Xiao Zhan blinked. Where? Yibo simply took his wrist, gently but with a confidence that made Xiao Zhan's breath hitch, and led him toward a door at the end of the hall. They stepped into a small storage room filled with unused props and equipment, lit only by a faint window above them. Why are we here? Xiao Zhan asked, half amused, half nervous. Yibo released his wrist but didn't step back. Because it's quiet. And I want to talk to you, without everyone watching. Xiao Zhan swallowed softly. Okay. What do you want to talk about? Yibo hesitated. This wasn't easy for him. Emotion never was, but he forced himself to try. Last night when we were rehearsing, it felt real. Xiao Zhan's lips parted, surprised by the honesty. It did, he admitted. I've never felt that during a scene before. Yibo nodded, relief flickering in his eyes. Same. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged. Heavy. Breathless. Side footsteps approached. They instinctively stepped closer to each other, hiding deeper in the room. Xiao Zhan's back brushed against the wall, and Yibo's face was only inches from his. The warmth between them grew, pulsing like a quiet heartbeat shared between two souls. Are you nervous? Xiao Zhan whispered. Yibo huffed out a tiny laugh. Only because you're standing so close. The admission sent a shiver through Xiao Zhan. Then maybe I should move. But he didn't. And Yibo didn't ask him to. Their breaths mingled in the tiny space. The air felt warm, thick, alive. When the footsteps faded, neither of them moved right away. Yibo's hand brushed against Xiao Zhan's, fingers grazing softly. Neither pulled away. Their hands stayed there, barely touching, yet somehow it felt like the entire world had narrowed down to that single delicate contact. Something's changing, Yibo said quietly. Xiao Zhan looked into his eyes and whispered, I know. Their moment was interrupted again when their manager shouted their names from down the hall. Both men stepped back quickly, flustered yet oddly exhilarated. As they walked out of the storage room, Yibo's hand brushed against Xiao Zhan's one more time. So softly, so intentionally it made Xiao Zhan's breath catch. That evening, filming ended earlier than usual. The sky was painted with shades of pink and gold as the sun lingered over the horizon. Xiao Zhan was packing up when Yibo approached with 2 cups of warm milk tea. I got this for you, Yibo said, holding out 1 cup. It's your favorite. Xiao Zhan's eyes widened. How did you know? Yibo shrugged casually, though the red tint in his ears betrayed him. I pay attention. Xiao Zhan felt warmth spread through his chest, deep, gentle, and real. Thank you, he said, meaning it more than he realized. They walked to the parking lot together, sipping their drinks as the cool evening breeze wrapped around them. The world felt quieter, softer, somehow more beautiful with each step they took side by side. When they reached Yibo's motorbike, he turned to Xiao Zhan. Do you want a ride? Xiao Zhan smiled, eyes sparkling. Only if you promise not to go too fast. I'll go slow, Yibo said, and though his voice was steady, his heart was anything but. Xiao Zhan climbed on behind him, arms sliding naturally around Yibo's waist. The moment he held on, everything inside Yibo melted into a warmth he didn't know how to hide. The bike hummed beneath them, the streetlights stretched into soft golden trails, and Xiao Zhan's cheek rested against Yibo's back. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't grand. It was gentle, if perfect. As the city lights glowed around them, Yibo whispered softly, almost to himself, "This feels right." Xiao Zhan heard him, and he smiled, 'cause he felt the same. And that quiet ride became one of the first moments where both of them understood. This wasn't just chemistry. This wasn't just connection. This was the beginning of something deeper, something soft, something powerful, something beautifully inevitable. This was when the love truly began. If you enjoyed this continuation and want more episodes, don't forget to like, share, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for the next captivating chapter.